So let's move on to the hear from Wisconsin and Colorado. So first we'll hear from Gregg Curtis, who's a former middle school teacher, counselor, an educator of counselors for schools, community mental health agencies, and institutions of higher education, but currently is in the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction working on school counseling. So I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you very much. And excuse me, thank you, REL Southwest, for the invitation to share Wisconsin's story. We have been working on what we call academic and career planning since about 2012. So it's not something that's really brand new anymore. I really appreciated the transparency that Scott put forward on sharing, volunteering to share all of Wisconsin's information, because we are really proud of the work that we've done, and we are more than willing to share anything and everything that you would like to take from us. What we essentially did, and what I'd like to talk about quickly here is just 4 bullet points. So to give you just a brief background on where we started, how we've supported ACP statewide, where we are currently, and then some small lessons learned throughout our journey. So in Wisconsin, when we started thinking about individualized learning plans back in 2012, it really was, we started with the question, so what is this? And I appreciated Arkansas's sharing that it's not about compliance, and it's not something that you know, success for this is not state defined, it's locally defined. But when we started thinking about what do we mean by academic and career planning in Wisconsin, knowing that we have 420 school districts and all of them do things that differently because we don't have a state board of education. We have 420 school boards that run their own local districts. It became really clear that we need to be vague in how we are defining this to give the freedom and the creativity room to grow in the 420 school districts. So when we thought about, so what is this thing that we're talking about, we were really, really intentional and thoughtful in the fact that we are focusing on the process. It's a process to actively engage students in their educational experience. And we want them to understand and learn about themselves, and we want to have them create a vision for their own future and really provide opportunities and experiences to create something that's immeasurable but infinitely vital for student success, and that's hope. So to give students the opportunity to create a hopeful vision of where they want to go when they get out of high school and they graduate from high school. And then as they've experienced and had those opportunities, to create the product that documents that. And the visual that I utilize is, you know, that great vacation that you went on. You don't really remember the map of how you got from one place to the other, but what you remember is the experiences and the pictures that you use to document it. So when we think about academic and career planning, it's helping students learn about themselves, learn about the world around them, create a vision for themselves, align with a caring, responsible, trusted adult to not necessarily answer all the questions or have all the answers, but to actually ask the right questions. And one of the questions, how do you help teachers do this? Because this is so different from a lot of the way that they have been prepared to teach, because they've been prepared to teach content. What we love about ACP in Wisconsin is the fact that this gives teachers the ability to teach kids, to not necessarily have to be evaluative, but to actually engage in an authentic, genuine relationship with kids. And when I think about how the different districts have done this and how it looks so much differently all around the state of Wisconsin, one of the things that I'm reminded of and I love to point to is the fact that we have lots of schools who saw this and said, golly, this is great. We're going to have all our teachers put outside their room. This was my post-secondary trajectory, and it's got the 2-year college that they went to before they went to the 4-year college before they went back for their graduate degree, and we're going to have all of our adults share that with their kids so they can see that. And that's a great idea, and what I pushed folks to do is say, you know what? All you're doing is you're talking about the teacher's academic self. You're not talking about them as an individual. So why not share all the part-time jobs that that person had as well? What did they do when they were in high school? What did they do when they were in undergraduate? What are the things that what are the experiences that they've had that made them into the teacher that they are in front of those kids today? So we were incredibly passionate about this work and how we could help adults interact with kids in a way that was really authentic, really genuine, and provided some good, just fundamental decision-making and conversational kinds of experiences for them. When we were subject to the statute in Wisconsin that mandated academic and career planning services for all students in grades 6 through 12 by last school year, we had already put into place that general foundational idea of what is this. It's a process that results in a product. The great thing about our statute was the fact that it occurred and we knew that it was coming, and it gave us time to prepare. It gave districts time to prepare. And the second great thing about it was the fact that it gave us money. It actually gave us money in an ongoing fund to purchase a software career development platform that we could provide for schools at no charge. Now, it was voluntary. Like Scott said, we don't mandate anything in Wisconsin when it comes to education. But the legislature saw this as an opportunity to say, we know that budgets are tight. We know you might not necessarily have access to an interactive, readily available career development platform online. So we're going to give you a whole bunch of money that the state can buy one, and then you as a district can opt in. And if you choose to opt in, you get to use it for free. And we were really fortunate that we were able to engage in a procurement process that resulted in a 5-year contract. And so we're in, I believe, year 2 or 3 of that right now. And districts are able to utilize it with their students at no charge. A huge thank you to our legislature, and we're currently in the process of collecting some of that information that says how are districts using this. One of the things we have been really clear about is the fact that just because you use our career development platform doesn't mean you're providing ACP. You're doing part of the academic and career planning services, but just because you do the assessments on there, just because you do the course planner, doesn't mean that you're doing ACP, because there are conversations that have to happen around all of those in order for kids to get the most benefit out of it. You can see on the screen right now, this is our timeline. The fact that we were notified of the mandate in 2013 and it wasn't going to take effect until 2017 was huge in our ability to provide guidance and technical assistance to our school districts. So one of the things that we did do was we created lessons to help those teachers prepare to have these conversations with kids. And one of the most powerful lessons that we created, that we've gotten the most feedback from, is actually having educators engage in their own reflective career development timeline to say, okay, so if we're defining college and career readiness with as being academically prepared and socially, emotionally competent, how did you get there? What are the experiences that you had? What are the milestones that you had? And probably most importantly, what were the relationships that you had that helped get you there? And actually go through the process of writing those things down. And when you engage educators in a process like that, it's pretty easy then to say, so isn't that kind of what we want you to do with students every day, is have you strive to be that person that 15 years from now, that student's going to write your name down because you were that important adult in their life that helped turn things away. And I'm sure Mia from Sheboygan High School could write down some educators' names from Sheboygan that were instrumental in her being able to be as successful as she was. One of the things that we were able to do with that nice long lead time was have a pilot. And we did a pilot in 2015, 2016. We had 61 districts apply, and we chose 25 of them, and we chose them incredibly thoughtfully. We wanted big schools and small schools and urban schools and rural schools and schools who were just starting and schools who had done this for a while. We wanted a great cross-section of what's going on in individualized learning plans or academic and career planning in Wisconsin. And what we were able to find out was if we went is that we went to them and we said, hey, this isn't going to be about examining what you're doing. This is, or what you're creating. This is really going to be about examining what you're doing. So what are the methods you've got in place? What's the infrastructure you've got in place? How are you working with kids? Are they like Lisa said, are they advisories? Is there a dedicated class? How are you doing this work? And we're not going to care about the products. Whatever your products look like, that's going to be great. And we actually had a couple of our pilot districts that after the pilot year came to us and said, you know, we're really glad that you chose us to be in the pilot, because the entire motivation for us applying to do that is the fact that we didn't want you to tell us what to do. We wanted to tell you, give us our own space. We need to be able to do this in a way that makes sense for our communities, for our kids, for our staff, and we don't need a checklist to help us do that work. Here are the pieces that we learned. That, you know what, implementation is dependent on a strong team. You've got to have lots of representation. Scott mentioned school counselors. Absolutely, school counselors are probably the expert in career development in your school, and they can't do all the work. It's going to take everybody on the rope pulling students along towards college and career readiness. They can certainly lead the work, but they can't do the work all by themselves. Second thing that we learned that was incredibly important is have districts engage in a gap analysis. Let them identify the things that they're already doing, whether they're systematic or not. Pockets, random acts of career development is still career development, and if you're doing it, document it. Look at what it is you're already doing, and then say, okay, so if only our 10th graders are getting this, how can we expand that so that it's our 9th graders and our 10th graders and our seniors? How do we make this overlap and touch every student, whether they're a special education student or a general education student? It doesn't matter. Academic and career planning and college and career readiness are for all kids here in Wisconsin. Third bullet, buy-in is important. Absolutely. Liz's question on how do you help teachers do this, that was one of the biggest hurdles I think that districts would say that they faced, was trying to get buy-in from all of the adults. The lessons that we created help to address some of that resistance in a way that's meaningful and efficient for districts around our state. Communication, Scott showed you some examples of that. And then one of the biggest pieces that we learned, and we keep hearing this over and over, is that, you know what, in order to do ACP well in Wisconsin with our students, there has to be a protected, dedicated time for the implementation of this. We have to have time to help students increase their knowledge, develop skills, practice those skills, and give them feedback on it, whether it's career decision-making or social emotional skills. It is absolutely imperative to have some dedicated time for this work. And I see by my little monitor here that I'm out of time. So right now, here in Wisconsin, how are we currently supporting it? We've got lots of professional development being pushed out by our 12 regional professional development education service agencies. 99% of our in-person workshops are done by our CISA partners, and it doesn't have to be just the 3 of us at DPI doing this work anymore. And that's been huge. We continue to get up the rigor on them. We continue to ask them to recommit, and our partnerships with them are non-negotiable. We enter into agreement every year. They tailor their professional development for their specific districts, and they're meeting the needs of their communities, their students, their staff. Lessons learned, I've mentioned these all already. So long lead time, absolutely. Planning versus just tell us what to do. Don't tell us what to do. Let us do it. We have to do it on our own. The fact that all means all, make sure that there's a focus on equity from the get-go, and then continuing to push districts to invest in themselves. We want them to utilize an evaluation kit. We know that there are some promising, powerful practices out there. Work-based learning and mock interviews and presentations of their students' final portfolios have been described as things that are incredibly important. So we're going to continue to push districts to talk about the how. How are we doing our work? Here are some resources that looks like Joni was able to list in the chat box as well. We've got an ACP webpage that gets updated regularly, and like I said, you guys are welcome to any or all of this stuff. Take it, use it, give us feedback. We would appreciate it as we continue to go forward.
Thanks, Greg. That's great. And now we'll move on to hear the story of Colorado. As I mentioned, Robin is the Graduation Guidelines Manager at the Colorado Department of Education and works with district administrators and schools to interpret legislation for those guidelines, and works on the Colorado Individual Career and Academic Plans, or as they call it in Colorado, ICAP. And she'll be joined by Andy Tucker, who brings a wealth of experience as an educator. He was a teacher, a high school counselor. He was a building and district level administrator, and I'll pass it off to you two. Thank you.
Hi there, thanks. This is Robin. I'm going to start by showing you a great slide of ICAP, Individual Career and Academic Plan.
And my name is Andy Tucker, and I am as they said, I am the Director of Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness at the Colorado Department of Education. And our office, just for a little bit of definitions, in Colorado we call Career and College Readiness Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness, or POWER. So we try to give our students power and bring out the power in them.
So back in the day, 2008, before the recession, there were all sorts of business folks at our capital wondering where all the workers were. They were really having trouble filling positions, as in fact they are today. And so, interestingly, back in 2008, there were quite a few education reform bills, including the ICAP, the Individual and Career and Academic Plan. Just to give you a quick little definition for it, it was meant to be a foundational tool that gave students ownership of a process. Again, you've heard that from all of us, that is really a process that helps the students explore their talents and aspirations, participate in post-secondary options, and create pathways. It seemed like such an easy and exciting idea. We had talked about it in-house as exploring, experiencing, engaging, and excelling. And I would not say that that's happening in every district. However, it's something that we have begun to really promote. It's connected to all sorts of initiatives within the state and in the Colorado Department of Education. To give you a quick idea of our timeline from 2008, when everyone was knocking on the doors of the legislature, so 2009 was legislation for ICAP. And just so you know, in the legislation, it said that students would have access to the process. There really was no more definition than that. Then in 2010, the state board created some rules, and our office put out things called milestones, which is what was going to happen with every single grade. There were about 30 or 40 milestones for every grade level. It was passed out to counselors. Then in 2013-14, we began to talk to stakeholders. There were lots of complaining about the ICAP process, and so we refreshed it in 2014. We've been on the road since then talking with folks about how to make ICAP work in their regions and in their schools. And then we're about ready to celebrate the 10th anniversary. As one of my peers says, if you're still whining about ICAP 10 years ago, then you're not really doing ICAP. So
the history that Robin just mentioned seemed like a pretty straight line. It seemed like we would be able to do it and roll it out fairly simply, and little did we know that you've heard from our other presenters today, it is not a simple process. In 2009, when the legislation went into effect, it was an unfunded mandate, and we were in a recession. So schools were losing staff members, and here they had this mandate to do something that they had never done before. It was managed by the Colorado Department of Education, as we've talked about, and we had a software program that was developed around the same time that was managed by a different state agency. All of those things came together to kind of create a lot of confusion in the field. And then the rules and the milestones in 2010 came out that were very overwhelming. As Robin mentioned, it became, we've heard over and over again in this webinar, and I want to stress that we've heard about the process. When ICAP was first introduced here in Colorado, it was a checklist. It was a list of, 15 or 20 to 30 items that each grade level in grades 9 through 12 had to complete. And it was handed to school counselors. And Gregg mentioned before that the problem is that school counselors have limited access to students and cannot do this by themselves. It should not be just the domain of school counselors. It should be the work of all members of the school community. So it was quite difficult for everyone. Then we really had very few people who were really in charge of it and who were really spreading the word and spreading the gospel of ICAP and really helping people to understand what power and post-secondary workforce readiness meant. In Colorado, it sounds like very similarly to Wisconsin, we have a very strong local control where districts have authority to do things their own way. And there wasn't enough guidance, and they didn't really want the guidance. They wanted to do it themselves, though we had these checklists that made it difficult for them to do it themselves. Things simply were not systematic over time. So in 2013, we said, okay, let's refresh this.
So the first thing we did actually was go to Scott Solberg and ask him if he would help us figure out ways that we could bring research into the process. And so he was really involved in a year-long conversation. And at the same time, we involved his stakeholders from all over the state. What do you really think ICAP could be and should be? We had state agencies, businesses, colleges, practitioners, all sorts of people involved. Some of the things that they told us was, let's not tell what ICAP is, let's show it. And let's not, ICAP, the P in ICAP does not stand for paper, as you've all been hearing as we go through. And let's integrate ICAP into all the messages that we have. How can we make ICAP actually foundational, which is how it was started out to be. We talked to counselors and talked to them about pairing with other teachers and coaches, and then listen to students. You really need to hear their stories, and they need to share their stories. And one of the most important things that happen is definitely a digital world now. Things are much more sophisticated. What we did was we created a toolkit, which you'll find on our website, and which really is a wonderful document that lots of folks around the country have been looking at, again, full of research from Scott and from our stakeholders. We held a summit where asked everybody to come, and we had over 600 people and all the districts represented. We started passing out ICAP awards to folks who had practices that were really appreciated across the state. And we started a group of ICAP facilitators who are regional trainers, and we have 12 of them, including facilitators who represent higher education and others who represent CTE, and counselors. So again, trying to spread and integrate ICAP into all parts of the educational realm. And then since then, we've been going around. We did hear that at the summit, which was statewide, that folks did not want to travel 500 miles to the center of Colorado to listen, that they really wanted us to go on the road. So we've been going on the road now for a couple of years, and that's really wonderful. So I would say that ICAP really has come of age.
And as by coming of age, we mean that ICAP has really begun to take the role of the foundational tool by which all of our students achieve post-secondary and workforce readiness. We've seen a tremendous amount of alignment of our state agencies. We have adopted, which I'll talk about in a little bit more depth in a second, graduation guidelines as a state that have ICAP at the center. We have different incentives to help to incentivize school districts to help students to follow their path, their own path, and to provide more pathways for students for career and college development. We have a large grant program that increases the number of school counselors in the state, and additional dollars that really do help to incentivize. As mentioned before, ICAP Colorado was the 50th state. Again, we're very local control to pass state level graduation guidelines. And so We recently passed our graduation guidelines, which include a number of measures, which we won't get into in any great detail. Please use that website to look more into that. But you'll see that at the top of that graduation guidelines menu, there's a sentence that states that graduation guidelines begin with the implementation of ICAP. So ICAP really has become the focal point of education, so that people recognize that the way we individualize career pathways and individualize education for students is via the ICAP.
So we have all sorts of state agencies that are aligned in this conversation. And one of the things I just wanted to point out here is that we, as Scott pointed out, it's really an economic story in Colorado, and so we have all the state agencies, labor and the higher ed and education together create a talent pipeline report. Where are the jobs that are in the state? And you can see that we've got it all divided by region here. It's a fascinating way to look at and to bring folks together. So this is really our last slide here, that we haven't stopped learning, that ICAP is something that we have struggled with for 10 years, and that I would say for the first time in the last 2, it really is foundational to all sorts of state initiatives. And as Scott and others were talking about, it's a career and college initiative. We are about ready to design the next step called an ICAP playbook, which is how we're going to show ICAP. The district has said to us all along, don't tell us what to do, we'll show you what to do. And at the same time, they all say, but wait, don't you have a few concrete examples? So we will take our quality indicators, which are 8 driving tenets of ICAP, and complete the toolkit with a guide for for different ways that districts can implement ICAP. We're going to tell digital stories, and it's a year-long celebration that goes all the way through 2020. We'll take this fall to work on that. Finally, we just have some resources, some which are typed into the chat box. Thank you, Joni, for typing away at all these things. Just pointing out, this is from our office. They're also from the other state agencies that are involved. We have a cool work-based learning continuum that you might take a look at that is driving some of the way that ICAP incorporates into work-based learning. We also have all sorts of state partners and agencies which you can click on and see the relationship that we have. So this is who we are. This is how to find us. As Greg said, and Lisa and everyone else, please contact us. Copy and steal everything that we have. I think that we have learned so much from you and so much from other states, so we are grateful for all the work that you are doing.
And as Robin said, I think the most important thing is that over 10 years, and as we've said all along, over the past 10 years, we've learned a tremendous amount about how to implement individual career and academic plans or individual learning plans for kids. And we've definitely made our mistakes, and we think that we're on track to really change that and to turn ICAP into the to have it serve the promise that it really can to make our kids more powerful.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your participation today. And I have a couple of questions, and one is related to something I think that both Greg, you said, Andy, Robin, you said, and that is that these ICAP plans or individual learning plans are not something that school counselors can be responsible for on their own, but that they can provide some leadership. And this relates to a question that one of our participants asked. How do you help prepare teachers to work with individual learning plans?
Well, we can take that. I think one of the things that we've done is ask the counselor, if you imagine that the counselor is the, I don't know, the leader or the ambassador of the process of ICAP.
Yeah, the champion maybe.
Yeah, the champion is maybe a great word. That what we've started to do was ask the counselors to partner with somebody, with a friend that they have in the school. One of the first examples that we had was a counselor and an English teacher, and they worked together to incorporate career planning and college planning and the ICAP into the English classes. So that was one of the things, just a very beginning first step. What are the relationships that the counselors already have with other adults, and how can they leverage those relationships?
Yeah,
Greg, did you want to add?
Great. Yeah, that's a great example, Robin and Andy, and I would agree. That sometimes peer-to-peer coaching can be a strong way to do that. You guys in Colorado mentioned the fact that you take a champion who sees the value in ACP but might not necessarily have what would be considered the skills to implement that, and you put that with the counselor who obviously does, and have them work together. I am a big believer in having more than just the counselors and administrators on your individualized learning plan team for your district and for a school locally. We always encourage folks to include an administrator, include a counselor, include somebody from special education, include somebody from CTE. Have a general ed.
Same as ours, Greg.
Yeah, have a special ed teacher. And, you know, if you can find champions under one roof that can have some success, then success breeds success, and their peers are going to look for ways to how do we do that? And then encourage them to come up with all the professional development opportunities and take advantage of those if they're available.
Yeah, I'll add one more.
I don't know about you guys, but someday I'd like to be able to get into our preparation programs as well and help those folks who are coming out of preparation programs come out with that mindset that I'm coming out to teach kids, I'm not coming out to teach content.
I was going to say something very similar, Greg, and I'll add that we have a simple, small step to take is to begin thinking about this, and we've actually considered almost rebranding our ICAP as being meaningful career conversations. And meaningful career conversations are something that we here in Colorado developed along with the American School Counselor Association. And really every single adult with whom a student interacts, with whom a youth interacts, can have a meaningful career conversation with that student and with that youth. We all have a career, and everyone, as Robin likes to say, everyone is career bound. And most of us adults have found a career. So how did we get there? And if teachers, if staff across a school building could simply do that and have meaningful career conversations with each of their students on a regular basis, that in and of itself could have a profound impact on the relevancy of school for students and on the power of these individualized learning plans.
Yep, really well said, Andy.
Thank you. And Scott, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just want to also make a point, too, that it is hard, and we have to take our time. And I think what Wisconsin did by having time, and a lot of our other, it's like an immediate, within 1 year, we want to roll this out. But we've got to give permission for our schools to start with their choir. Maybe we start in the 9th grade with teachers that are interested and invested. And then as those experiences start to roll up as positive and we start hearing about it, then the communication can start that, hey, this is something to buy into and engage in. It's not as scary as we might think. It's actually exciting. It's fun. These conversations that Andy's talking about are really meaningful. But the idea of trying to do it all whole school at once is a really tough process, I think, for many to consider.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's in part what Arkansas is doing. They're beginning with 8th grade, and they're going to grow up from there. So I want to thank you all for participating today. Not only as participants and asking thoughtful questions and burning questions that you have, but also thank our panelists. I learned so much from all of you each time we have a conversation, and really appreciate your expertise and your passion around student success. So thank you very much for your time today. I want to remind you that there's a feedback survey that will pop up at the end of our webinar today, and I think we need to remind you, you can connect with REL Southwest. You can email Lacey or follow us on Twitter. Visit our website. We'll be posting resources and that sort of thing on the REL Southwest website. So thank you very much for your time today. With that, I think we're ready to sign off.